Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Cyber Review. Today, we're talking with Glen Singh about his book, Reconnaissance for Ethical Hackers. He's a cybersecurity author and educator with expertise in offensive security tactics, cybersecurity operations, threat detection and analysis, and network engineering. He is the author of multiple books, including the Ultimo Kali Linux book and Reconnaissance for Ethical Hackers. Hi, Glenn. How are you? Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Sophia. I'm doing quite fine.
Okay, sounds great. So today we're going to talk about your book, Reconnaissance for Ethical Hackers, right?
Yes, 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 and
Yes.
that's one of my most favorite one so far.
That's great. That sounds good. So this is your latest book.
Yes, yes, it
Oh,
is, and it just released I think it's at the first week of August actually, so it's very new.
very new. So we're going to have fresh content and good things coming up. So
Yes,
tell us a
definitely.
little bit about yourself. How did you get into cyber and what made you write this book?
So, well, my name is Glenn, and when I was younger, I always wanted to be a hacker. So I was trying to figure out ways on how is it that, hackers break into computers in those cool movies. For example, like Die Hard and even the hackers movies as well. And eventually I started doing some Googling, found some certifications. Then I started to do a lot of reading online, and then I realized, okay, hacking is a lot of more work and then I'm thinking, okay, hacking is illegal. So how is it that I could do this legally? Then I realized that there's jobs called ethical hackers, penetration testers, and even now it's called red team, and depending on where you want to go with it. So I started to learn how to do ethical hacking and penetration testing, got my certifications, got my training, and eventually I break into the IT industry as a network engineer. And within that same company, I started to do ethical hacking exercises to look for any sort of security weaknesses, find any sort of ways that other bad guys could break in. So, in other words, I'm trying to look for ways for hackers to break in, but also help the company defend against any sort of cyber attack. Eventually, I became a cybersecurity educator slash lecturer with over 8 years experience as of now. And during that time, I've taught a lot of persons all around the world. And one thing that I always notice is that most of these courses and even training focuses on breaking in. But what I noticed was that there was a small gap that exists, which is how do we efficiently collect data or collect sensitive data that could be used by hackers to break into companies. And that's where I started to look into focusing on creating a dedicated book that could be used for anyone actually to do reconnaissance, from passive reconnaissance to active information gathering, and especially focuses on open source intelligence. And that was really my influence because I wanted to help everyone else to better understand how to collect data, but also to help organizations to understand how they are leaking data, which could be leveraged by hackers.
Okay, that sounds like a long journey here to get you to get
It
this
it
book.
is.
Sounds great. So you gave us a little bit of an overview of your book. Can you tell us who is this book for specifically?
Yeah, so I've written this book for anyone who has an interest into breaking into the cybersecurity industry. And this could be from students, it could even be seasoned professionals who want to develop a little more strong point in understanding how data is leaked. And most importantly, I've designed that it could be used by law enforcement around the world because law enforcement also use open source intelligence to catch those bad guys, well, the cyber criminals that is. So it's really designed for anyone, including beginners who are now fresh from school or probably has no knowledge in IT, but they want to get into cybersecurity. So this book is simply for everyone.
Okay, so in your book, you explore essential steps for successful pen testing. Can you highlight keys that overlook and they are step vital to effective to do a testing process?
Yeah. So one of the things that I've noticed is that sometimes we don't collect sufficient data on an organization before we move on to the scanning, enumeration, and even the exploitation phase. And without collecting sufficient data on, let's say, your targeted organization or your targeted network, sometimes we may not efficiently, let's say, develop an exploit that might work against a vulnerability, or we may totally miss a security weakness on a target system. So one of the most important things that I focus on, especially with this book, is explain to the reader how to efficiently collect data, but most importantly, to analyze this data and extract what is meaningful and to not focus on things that are irrelevant to the actual penetration test. In addition, I've also mentioned some legal concerns that a lot of ethical hackers might have, especially when collecting data, because, collecting data, we could use it for good things and even
Yes.
bad things.
Lastly, my last question here regarding your book. For readers who are new to ethical hacking, what practical tips do you have to help them to get started?
Well, one thing that I always notice is that a lot of persons always feel a bit overwhelmed and sometimes intimidated in getting started. One thing that I always recommend to all of my learners, students, even colleagues, is the cool thing about IT is that we could virtualize any environment on our computer. So if you want to learn how to do ethical hacking and penetration testing, you don't necessarily need to buy dedicated devices. We could use free and open source tools like VirtualBox to create a virtualized environment, and we could download test images and vulnerable systems that we could run on our personal devices. So, in other words, if we are breaking into our personal systems, we don't necessarily need legal permission because we own that system. So, if you want to break into the industry, you could look at virtualizing your vulnerable systems, and even you could use Kali Linux, which is a free penetration testing Linux distribution. And most importantly, don't be afraid to lab up anything. It doesn't necessarily mean that you need to lab up everything cybersecurity related, but even in, let's say, server administration, even in networking, you could virtualize your entire environment on your personal laptop or your computer.
Okay, thank you for these tips. So, this is a question I like to ask my guests a lot. And what are your thoughts on the future of cybersecurity?
Well, with my personal thoughts, and the advancement with AI technology, I'm seeing that a lot of hackers and almost anyone is using AI right now to actually figure out ways on how to break into systems. But most importantly, I'm also seeing a lot of organizations are using AI to actually better detect threats and new viruses and even next generation attacks in their network. So with cybersecurity, it will always remain or it will continue to be a very demanding field in the industry. However, with the next generation of cybersecurity professionals, of course, there's a lot more things to learn, and eventually, we'll start to leverage AI a bit more to help us with our tasks to actually defend companies against cyber attacks and even detect threats on our networks and systems.
Okay, thank you. And last one, where can the readers get your book and how they can connect with you?
For getting my book, it's available on Amazon, and the link will be shared. And for connecting with me, you can always feel free to do some reconnaissance on me. Simply Google my name, Glen Singh. You'll find
That,
me on
that's smart.
Facebook. You'll find me on LinkedIn. You'll also find me on Instagram too. And then there's my personal website. So you can always feel free to connect with me on any platform. I'll be happy to share additional information with you guys. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Glenn, for your time. And we wish you all the best with this new book.
Thank you very much, Sophie, for having me here today.